You know the drill. Every 4 years, it begins. Before politicians have even had the chance to step in the doors of their new office, the complaints come pouring in.
Why didn't my pet issue get addressed? I donated to you. I called people eating soup for you. I was a missionary with a political vision for you. Why you no love me, politician? They're all a bunch of lying jerks.
And it's kinda true. Despite voting new people into office, the big promises for big policies to tackle big problems always get swept under the incomprehensible rug that is the government. We vote for new politicians because they promise change, and yet it always seems like they're doing nothing about what really matters. Is it because politicians hate us? Are they all just liars? Well, yes, no, well, kind of. There is an answer. We call the magical force that politicians use to get things done political capital. It comes both from a politician's charisma and also their visible public support, but it's never an infinite resource. There is a limit on it, which determines how many issues can be addressed and which policies are most difficult to achieve. Quantifying political capital is a little bit tricky, but we can say some things with certainty. For example, a politician's political capital is at its highest right after they win an election. And it's also even higher when a party comes into power after years of being out of office. These facts give us a picture of how Barack Obama was able to pass healthcare reform after years of other politicians trying and failing to do so. But it cost him a huge amount of his political capital, leaving him vulnerable to his Republican rivals who took back Congress in the midterm elections. Since then, there's been no progress on a comprehensive immigration package, closing Guantanamo Bay, or reforming the tax brackets. Many of the things that he's promised, he hasn't gotten to, and a lot of people are beginning to ask why. Largely, it's because the amount of political capital a politician has tends to go down each time a major issue is addressed. Politics is all about groups vying for attention. And once a group's issue has been addressed, it has less incentive to stick around supporting a politician. Worse yet for politicians, the opposition is always able to rally their base every time that a political action is taken. They spur the enthusiasm of their base's feelings against new laws and use this momentum to win new elections. This means that politicians are always on a tightrope. They have to balance not spurring on the opposition or losing enthusiastic supporters with still seeming like they're doing enough to deserve your vote. To make this easy, think of political capital in terms of a simple game. In this game, two politicians are in a room with $1 each. They can spend their money to buy new policies, but not all policies are priced equally. Some policies are more expensive the harder they are to pass through. And when one person passes a policy, the other side gets a little extra pocket change. As policies come into effect, public support for good policies can earn a politician serious money, but at the same time, bad policies can bankrupt them. But there's no way of knowing which way this gamble will turn out. Politicians can believe that they are honestly right, only to find out that their solution caused more problems than it solved. And even if they are right, the extra dough from good policies takes a long time to come in. Peter here is in power now, and he wants to get rid of subsidies to oil companies. Because oil companies are powerful, this is an expensive move. He has to spend 85 cents to pass this policy. Meanwhile, his political rival, Gary, rallies his supporters.
My elitist latte liberal opponent is killing jobs with his hippie initiatives.
Peter doesn't have much capital left when midterm elections roll around. Meanwhile, Gary is rolling in the dough. Gary sweeps midterm elections for Congress, giving him more capital and making policies more expensive for Peter. Before, pig farm regulation would have cost Peter 15 cents. But now, it's a 30-cent policy. Peter clearly can't afford this. His best bet is to pick at small issues, hoping that he rallies enough public sentiment to boost his political capital. If he plays his cards right, he may be able to stick around, but with low capital, it's not likely. Inevitably, Gary will get smart too, picking only at small issues and hoping that they get him enough political capital to stay just ahead of Peter. The best bet for either of them to stay in power is to spend as little as possible without seeming asleep at the wheel. Because spending too much political capital can put a politician at risk, most campaign promises don't end up getting fulfilled. This is terrible news for problems where daring is needed to achieve lasting results. Problems like infrastructure overhaul and educational investment. Policies which could solve these problems are terribly expensive, and most politicians won't go within 20 yards of a big risk. Our short attention span as voters only feeds into the problem. We tend not to be interested in anything not in the news, and even then, we lose interest quickly. Our best shot for breaking this cycle is for us as voters to take a long-term view. There are politicians out there willing to risk a huge amount of political capital to do what's right. But it falls upon us to realize how much it costs for an issue to be addressed, and to provide the groundswell support that gives politicians the capital to solve big problems. We can achieve that by campaigning for what we believe in, whether that's in the form of getting out there on the streets, or just writing a letter to your local congressperson. Every little bit goes a long way to making important issues easier to address. With enough visible support for a policy, anything can be done. All it takes is us realizing that the years in between elections aren't the time to kick up our feet and watch. They're the time that we can do the most to get the most done. This has been Riley here. Peace until next week.